Hello everyone and welcome to Onshape 3D tutorials. In this tutorial you will learn the basics of 3D modeling in Onshape. The example is shown over here, and over here you can see the real 3D model that we will recreate in this video tutorial. By recreating this example you will learn very important techniques. That is, you will learn how to draw basic 2D shapes. You will learn how to specify the dimensions of lines and shapes. Then you will learn how to specify the position of objects with respect to points, lines, and shapes. Then you will learn how to extrude 2D parts to create 3D parts. Then you will learn how to create holes. And finally, you will learn how to revolve 2D objects or 2D shapes to create 3D objects. Okay, let's immediately start. Once you log in Onshape, click over here, then click on Document, and then give a name to the document. I will call it as Test 4. Press Enter, and now you will see this welcome screen, and you can start with 3D modeling. The first step is to create a 2D shape shown over here. We need to create a rectangle, then we need to create this fillet, this circle, and then we need to specify all the dimensions. So let's start doing this. But before we do that, it's very important to learn how to pan and how to zoom the view as well as how to rotate. To pan the view, that is to translate the view, press and hold the middle mouse button or the roller mouse button and move your mouse left or right, up and down. Then, to zoom the view, you can use the middle or the roller mouse button by simply rolling forward or backward this roller mouse button. And finally, to rotate, you need to press and hold the middle mouse button as well as the right mouse button and move it, and you will be able to rotate the view. Another way of rotating the view is to use these arrows. Or if you want to have a predefined isometric view, you can either press here, then you can click here to have a front view, or the back view, right view, or any other view that you need. Let's create our first sketch. First of all, let's select this top plane and then click here to create a sketch. First time you click on sketch, you will notice that this small menu pops up over here. My advice is to move this menu here such that you have more space for drawing. One very important thing to keep in mind that when sketch is active, you will see this menu. When you want to finish the sketch, you need to click here. That is, make sure that this menu is active, and currently you're in sketch 1. Click here on top view to make sure that you see the plane from the top. Let's create the rectangle. To create the rectangle, locate this button over here, expand it, and make sure that you select center point rectangle. Click here to define a center and draw a rectangle with arbitrary dimensions. Don't worry, later on we will adjust the dimensions. Okay. Now you need to exit the rectangle mode. There are several ways to do that. One way is to press Escape on your keyboard. Another way is to simply do the right mouse click and click on Escape Center Rectangle. And that's it. Let's go back and let's look into our sketch. We need to specify the dimensions. The length should be 100 and the width should be 60. Let's learn how to do that. To specify the dimensions, you need to locate this dimension button. So click here, then click here, and then you will see this dimensioning line. Click here, and then over here you can enter dimensions, and you can see how the shape is adjusted. Then click here, expand, and set the dimensions. The dimensions can be arbitrary. For example, if I click 50 over here, and if I verify that this is correct, which is not, I can easily modify this by simply clicking here and pressing 60. Next, we need to create a fillet. However, you need to exit the dimension mode by simply pressing Escape. To create the fillet, click here, Then click on this line and then on this line, and the fillet will be created. Over here you can change the radius. However, you need to press Enter to complete the fillet creation and finally specify the radius. If I press 15, you will get the radius R15, and then you can move this arrow outside of this arc. If I go back here, I can see that this is correct. Next, we need to create a circle whose diameter is 12. To do that, simply locate the circle button, make sure that you select center point circle, then click over here and draw an arbitrary circle. Press escape to exit the circle mode, and let's adjust the diameter. So let's double click, or actually let's click here, then on circle, and then here we can specify 12, and that's it. Then let's make sure the dimensions are okay. Click here, and this should be 15, and that's it. Then let's click here, and this should be 15. Good, and that's it. This is our 2D sketch. Press escape to exit the dimension mode. Now, to exit the sketch mode, you need to press here. If you simply close the sketch window without saving it, that is without pressing this button over here, the sketch will not be saved. Consequently, make sure that you press here, and now we are exiting, or we are already out of the sketch mode. The next step is to go back into the isometric view and to extrude this sketch. There are several ways to extrude. The easiest way is, first of all, to select this shape and then simply click here, and here you can specify the depth of the extrusion. Let's go, for example, with 15. That's it. Make sure you click here, and here we are. Congratulations, you have created your first 3D model in Onshape. And over here you can see extrude, and you can see a sketch. If you for some reason need to modify the sketch, that's not a big issue. Simply double click here and click here on top. And for example, let's add an additional fillet over here. So click here, then click here, and here's the fillet. Press enter, and that's it. Save this, and now magic happens. If you get back to the 3D view, you will see that the extrusion is being modified. This is because extrusion depends on sketch 1. Let's continue further. Next, we need to create the top of this 3D part. To do that, first of all, select this face of the extruded model and then click on sketch. This will attach the sketch to the top face. And you can see sketch 2, and you can see that sketch 2 is attached to the top surface. Okay, now we are in sketch 2. You can click on top to see the top view, and let's create an additional rectangle. So over here, let's click on corner rectangle, and let's create a simple rectangle. Here it is, and let's adjust the dimensions. First of all, press escape, then click here on dimensioning, and let's go here with 12, and then click here, and let's go with 44. And that's it. Good. Press escape again, and now we are out. The next step is to extrude this piece. Click here to exit the sketch, and to save everything, go back to the isometric view, then select the newly created shape, and then simply click here to extrude, and let's set the extrusion to be 40. And then let's click here, and this will create the first part. Next, let's attach a sketch to this face over here. To do that, simply select this face, then click on sketch, and you will see sketch number 3. Sketch number 3 is attached to this face over here. Then let's click here, or actually not here, let's go back to the isometric view, and let's see which plane we need to select. We need to go here back, and now we are in sketch 3. And let's create a simple triangle. To do that, simply click here, then click here, click here, click here, and then click back here and press escape. Now you can actually click here to make sure that you have created everything correctly, and we need to extrude this triangle. However, we need to see what are the dimensions of this triangle, or actually of this square over here. For that purpose, we need to go back in Sketch 2, and we can see that the length is 44. This means that we need to extrude the triangle for 44. Let's exit the Sketch 2, go here, rotate the view, simply click on this rectangle, and then let's extrude. And over here, let's see what's happening. We can see the extrusion is in wrong direction. We need to adjust the direction. You can do that by pressing minus or clicking minus and put minus 40. And now you obtain this second part. However, this is still not correct because I think the dimensions should be 44. This is not a big deal. We can simply adjust it over here, and that's it. And let's press here, and that's it. Now we have created the top part. The next step is to create a hole over here. To create the hole, first we need to assign a sketch to this face. So click here, then click on sketch, and this will assign sketch 4 to this face. Good. Let's now just adjust the view. It's not front, it should be left view. And now we are in sketch 4. And let's draw a simple polygon. So let's click here, and then let's just use the default settings. Click here, and let's click here, and then press escape. And here is our polygon. Good. Next, let's click here to save this sketch, and here it is. The next step is to create a hole whose shape is in the shape of this polygon. There are several ways to do that. One way is to extrude and then to use Boolean operations. However, we can actually create this hole by extruding. Let me show you how to do that. Simply click here on this shape, then click on extrude, and then here you have the options to remove. Good. And then let's adjust the dimensions. Let's specify here minus, or actually 40 millimeters, and that's it. Rotate to make sure that the hole is properly created. It is, and that's it. Simply click here, and voila, here's our hole. Perfect. And as the final step, we need to create this shape on top of the object. Let's learn how to do that. To create the object, make sure that you select the front plane, then click on sketch to create the sketch, and this is sketch 5. Let's click here on back, and let's start with creating shapes. Now, the issue over here is that we are currently selecting over here lines and faces that belong actually to this plane over here, that is to this face, and that's a big problem over here, since we want to make sure that we select the shapes that live inside of the plane. How to resolve this? But before I do that, let me show you the issue with that. For example, if I want to click on line over here, and I want to draw a line from here to here, you can see that I cannot snap to these edges over here. To resolve this, let's first press escape, and then over here, under search tool, search use, or click over here. Use is one very useful tool. It enables us to project the points and lines from some other faces onto our sketch. So let's click here on use, and now you can see that you can simply click on this line, or actually on this point, and on this line, and they will be actually projected onto our sketch number 5. And to show you that, simply click here to close the sketch, and then you will see actually in this plane that you have this point, you have this line, and you have this point. Now you can activate back the sketch 5 by double clicking, click on back, and now we can start drawing. Let me now just pan the view. First of all, I want to draw a line from the middle of this point, and this will be a symmetry line for revolving the shape. How to create that line? Well, click here and make sure that midpoint is being selected. Then click on line, and now you can draw a line from the midpoint. And then let's now expand this line, and you can see that there is a constraint that this line is perpendicular to the horizontal line, and let's click over here, press escape. Good. This is our symmetry line, and then we can start with modeling. First of all, click here to create a line from here to here, and then press escape. Next, let's create an additional thing. Let's create an spline by clicking here, then let's click here, then let's click here, let's click here, and then let's click here, and finally let's click here to close the spline, and then press escape, and here's our spline. Now you can modify the shape of this spline. Oops, let me now Control Z to erase this. To modify, you can simply select this point, and you can drag this point to create any shape you like. For example, we can create something like this, or we can create something like this. However, let's start and keep this irregular shape. Press escape, click here, and that's it. The next step is to simply revolve this shape by clicking here, and then we have this option to revolve. Here you need to click on this line as revolve axis, and that's it. Press enter, and this looks like a mushroom on top of our object, and that's it. Congratulations, you have created your first 3D model and 3D part in Onshape. That's all for today, and thanks for watching.